Hello, Better Not Perfect podcast audience. It is my pleasure to welcome you to an episode of the Better Not Perfect podcast. And if you've joined us in season 1, you will remember that we spent some time chatting, getting to know one another, getting to hear more about the book, and just really going deeper on this journey to better together. Now, here we are in season 2, where I've invited some special guests, some phenomenal women who have played a role in my journey to better. Either they're new, remarkable acquaintances, or we've been together for some time on this journey. But either way, we're thrilled to have them. And today in studio, it is just my pleasure to welcome Brenda Baddam, who is a senior executive in the legal field, to the Better Not Perfect podcast. Hello, Brenda.
Hola, amiga. Thank you
Hi.
for having me.
Oh, you are very welcome, my dear. You look gorgeous. So good to
See,
see you. And for some in our audience, they're used to seeing us in studio, so this may be a new look for them. But, we get better anywhere we can get better. And we
mm-hmm.
get dynamic women anyway we can get dynamic women. And sometimes that's in person in studio, and sometimes that is not. But we are bringing women together. Here, we're in conversation and we're bringing you to the world because you have certainly, in the short time that we have connected, blessed my life and my spirit. And you have had some good insights. So today, we're going to open up and I'm going to ask you a question I've asked our other guests. So, what does better, not perfect mean to you when you hear that term personally? What does it mean?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much. It's an honor to talk to you.
Mm.
And you know that. You know there's love from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah.
Um, when when I first found out that I was going to get that question, I was on a cruise, dancing my heart out, and I was dancing to Celia Cruz, which is a Cuban artist, Afro Latina.
Mm-hmm.
And she has this song called La vida es un carnaval, which means like life is a carnival. And it goes up and it goes down, but the best way to do it, to do life, is to sing through it. And then I started thinking, man, as a second generation Latina, as a plus size woman, as an attorney, a young attorney in the field, there is this pressure to be perfect, right? To achieve this like American dream, have the perfect home, have a husband, kids, a high paying career. And those pressures literally make life like a roller coaster because you're always chasing the next high. But you said it in your book, and I am so blessed by your book. But you said it, it's like putting more into your purse that is continuously full and then having it weigh you down, right? And I think why better is because there is no societal goals that you have to meet. It is your own goals, right? Like you're scratching the idea of having to meet these life perpetually changing societal standards and creating a sustainable life path.
Wow. That is deep. See, podcast audience, that's why Brenda is here with us today. so,
I know.
so now you talked about the bag, and I love that song by Erykah Badu, Bag Lady. And
Mm,
I certainly found myself to be a bag lady, carrying a lot around that, like you, on this journey to be perfect.
mm,
And the more I attained, the less I felt like I had.
mm-hmm,
I found that at some point I was just losing even a grip on my own reality. What was real, what was fabricated and put forth as an illusion of the life I wanted others to see, the illusion of the me that I wanted others to see. And when you're
Mhm.
careful, not careful, and you're living in that space, um, and you're telling tales when you have to remember the lies you tell or
Mhm.
exaggerations, but I keep it real. So let's talk
Mhm.
about the lies we tell, to
Mhm.
cover up the feelings of inadequacy. But Brenda, at least for me, it didn't start at this notion of perfectionism. Something happened in my
Mhm.
early days in my youth that really set me on that path. Certainly for me, it was grief and loss. I talk about that in the book as well as in earlier shows in the podcast, losing a beloved grandmother. And then at other times, it was just quote unquote early failures in life that brought me to a point where I said, or perceived failures, having a baby young, um, failing out of college, things
Mhm.
that were happening to me and in me that made me say, when I'm achieving, when I'm doing well, I get positive attention. And when I'm not, oh, I don't like the way people look at me and treat me.
Mhm.
So I learned in my formative years to pursue the positive at all costs.
Mhm.
Does that resonate in anywhere in your life when you think back? Can you think that there were some inflection points that you started out on this path to perfect?
Yeah, I so my grandparents came here from Cuba, and I talk about the American dream because that's what I grew up with, right? And from very young, the idea of education and continuing education was so big in my life. So they put me in I'm very grateful, let me just say that, but they put me in a magnet program from like middle school for law.
Whoa.
I know.
So talk about aiming your arrows. Mm-hmm.
hmm
Mm-hmm.
So even in high school, I knew that law was going to be my thing, but the pressure of that. And, my grandparents were not English speakers. In Miami, you can get away with not speaking English or you're speaking Spanglish. So I knew that I had to leave Florida to become better,
Hmm.
right? Not only for just my language skills, but just a change of scenery to experience life. And then when I came to New York, I I felt I didn't know English, right? Like the way that people speak here, the things that like the little phrases that people say, I had no clue. I felt like such a failure. I had prepared so hard to be in law school, and yet I was not prepared.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Say more about that.
Yeah. So it's vivid, actually. Their Albany Law School has a like a pre-entrance program where they kind of prepare you for your first day. And there's an example where they tell you like, there's a bar crawl. I had no idea what a bar crawl was. Like it wasn't a thing that I knew. And then come December, and I had no idea what snow tires were, or snow boots, or snowshoes. Um, and so I had to learn really quick. And I remember telling or asking my classmates, like if I say something wrong, if my accent comes out, if I don't know this, like tell me, teach me, right?
Hmm.
Because I'm lost a little bit. Um, and it was hard. I even remember this woman, she said, "You're saying Albany, but it's Albany. Learn how to say it right." And I will never say it wrong again.
Well, let me tell you what I know about Albany. In
Mm,
Georgia, Albany
mm.
is Albany.
Okay.
Yeah, so I learned that.
I just
So yes,
Mhm.
New York is a different place. Yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but also culturally too, we like my family's very close. We do the kissing on the cheek. It's not the same here. So I really had to learn, like really quick, how to adapt to my circumstances.
Mm, yeah.
Mhm.
When you talked about the move and needing to leave Miami, that for me was the case as well. Growing up and being born and raised in Brooklyn, growing up and going to college in New York City, there was a point in my life when I knew that after that stumble first attempt at college, that if I was going to succeed, I needed to leave New York City in order to do it. I needed to move away from distractions. And, I found myself with not necessarily a negative group of people, but they weren't good for me because they
Mm,
were sort of highlighting and perpetuating all those things that I needed to leave behind, the drinking, the partying, all of those things. And I tell my story and I talk in a book about struggles with alcoholism and addiction that
mm,
probably originated during that time, but definitely increased with age. But, there's a thing we talk about in my 12-step program called geographical solutions.
mm,
And sometimes it can work out so that geographical move back then worked for me. But then there were times when I tried geographical moves and it was a situation in which there's a saying, everywhere you go, there you are.
mm,
And I found myself trying to leave places when it wasn't the place that was the problem, it was me. And so I say that because that brings me to the internal, what was going on inside of me that
mm,
made me feel either like an imposter or feeling like, I didn't fit in the environment I was in,
mhm,
making me feel lesser than, making me feel fraudulent, just making me feel negative. And I talk about that a lot in that first chapter of A Hot Mess.
mhm,
So that was the wrong solution, at that time. I made a geographical move at that time,
mhm,
and there I was in Jersey, still the same Shay, before I was Dr. Shay, but still the same Shay, except the messy Shay.
mm.
So I guess when you think back over your life, can you think about times where internally you were struggling and it was manifesting externally in a way that you don't feel good about, you didn't feel good about, and what did you do about it?
Yeah, this is such a good topic. And when I read that first chapter where you said, "Do you ever feel like you don't fit in? That either you're too much for the situation or too small for the room?" Man, I have chills right now. Always, always. Either I was too much, too Hispanic for the moment, or I didn't know enough to fit in. That was in law school. And then when I graduated, I'm an attorney. I've done all these years of education. And where do I fit? Like, what do I do? Like, do I go out and get a 9 to 5, like what millennials have been told for a very long time in a brick and mortar company? Do I pursue a new path and do some cool virtual space as like the younger generations are doing? I had no idea where I was. And to be honest, even now, there is this imposter syndrome sense that I perpetually live with,
Mm.
right? I'm the only Latina assistant attorney general. And I know we're not supposed to talk about titles, but this is
Mhm.
important.
Mhm.
The only one in the Northern District. Why?
Mm.
Right? Do I belong here? When you think about judges, how many Latina judges do you see on the bench?
Mm.
N- I don't know any in this area. The
Mm.
only one that we had moved away to DC. So do I belong here?
Yes.
Thank
Yes,
you.
you do, for that very reason. That's why we need you here.
Thank you. Thank you. But it is, I think it is something that anyone deals with, but especially like young professionals that are kind of stuck in the middle. They have no idea whether they should succumb to the pressure of the 9 to 5 or, do something cool like Generation Y. Like it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you think about those moments, of imposter syndrome, or is there something in particular that you do to sort of pull yourself out of that headspace or out of that mood? Is there a favorite? How do you encourage yourself? How do you move beyond those feelings? I mean, I know we're all a work in process, and we're all trying to get better. There are some
Mhm.
things I feel though that we've all sort of learned along the way, tried to learn along the way, that we should, if we can, pay it forward and share it with other women, other people who may still be struggling in those areas.
Yeah, I so I'm very tied into my faith.
Mm.
Um and I remember listening to a preaching, and I don't remember who it was, but they said something that I say to myself almost daily. I am a child of the God Most High. I am a queen sitting upon the throne, and regardless of who comes in and out of my kingdom, I will not move from my rightful place.
Ooh,
I know.
oh, that is powerful. Yes,
Yeah.
positioning and knowing who you are. And I talk about that. I talk about when our vertical comes into
Mhm.
alignment, our horizontal. So our
Mm.
vertical relationships with God, for me, it's God as well.
Mhm.
My faith is that of Christianity. But,
Mhm.
when we come into vertical alignment with God, with the higher power, then we also are now in a position to be in better horizontal relationship with our peers, with
Mhm.
others, with to have healthy relationships. And at the center of that is that we're able to now get on that, be on that journey of building self awareness, self knowledge, and
Mm.
begin the process of self love. Because when
Mhm.
you feel that you have a creator who loves you, and for me, that was a journey because I didn't, I started out in a very religious home, and then I sort of left my faith with some pretty, uh, I don't know, some mixed feelings because I
Mm.
was looking at people and sort of putting people in a God position. Or and then and I guess what I'm really trying to say is that people are supposed to be representative of the faith, right? And they're
Mhm.
supposed to show tenets of love, compassion, and I didn't really experience that in my younger years.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so my feelings towards religion were at some point very jaded.
Yeah.
But in my journey, you know having love role modeled in front of me, love through faith, through a dear friend that I talk about in the book, who really role modeled what it was to be a Christian, to find a God of love, a God of forgiveness, a God of acceptance, not a God of judgment. Um, when I was able to embrace that God,
Mhm.
then I was able to feel the love that God actually had for me. And then I
Mhm.
was able to develop love for myself.
You are preaching.
But I had to get to that place before I could see myself as a queen
Mm.
on a throne that should not be moved, no matter
Yeah.
who comes in and out of my life. And
Mhm.
that's not to say that as queens, we are always right, with
Mhm.
the things we do or say. You know, we do make mistakes,
Absolutely.
but that doesn't mean even when our crowns are a little lopsided that day, hanging off our heads, a little cocked to the side, we're still queens,
Yeah.
and we so finding that forgiveness of self and being big enough of a woman that we can ask others to forgive us when we are at fault.
Yeah. Someone once explained it to me, when you feel like you've become perfect is when you have made your own self your God.
Mm.
And that has stuck with me because the moment that you forget that humility guides you, right? That it is a betterment of self, how do you strive for more? I don't know if that makes any sense. Like to me, that was such an eye-opening statement. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's why finger snap my agnostic brothers and sisters because they're they're saying I'm on a journey. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a seeker of faith. I
Mm.
don't quite know, but I would prefer to spend time with someone who's open and seeking than someone who feels that they've arrived and that they are either God themselves or the best manifestation of their God, meaning that
Mhm.
there are a sense of religious holiness within them that they tend to believe that they're perfect but not really, you know.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So being on that journey of love and so your faith plays a role in terms of how you center yourself. I don't know about this, but let me ask you. With me, I have found that sometimes my thoughts can veer toward the negative.
Mhm.
And I have learned that I've had to establish the discipline of self control in terms of how I control my thoughts and sort of bring them back into the right path because I will either, by way of example, sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and the first thought is a negative thought. What I
Mhm.
didn't get done the day before, um, oh, well, there's still dishes in the sink, or, just not having grace for myself. Or
Mhm.
I'm remembering something that really bothered me that happened either at work or, and in those situations, I'm not having grace for others.
Yeah.
So I've had to train myself to, when I start going down that path, to bring my thoughts back into right alignment. And you're such a positive, uplifting, inspiring person. I can't imagine that you struggle with that, Brenda.
Oh,
But
I do. I do. I so a lot of people don't know this. Um in when everyone was to get the vaccines, my husband was one of the first people to get the vaccines. Um there is like a 1% chance in Latin and black men, or 1% of Latin and black men that get blood clots in their body. And my husband happened to be part of that 1%.
oh no.
And he actually went blind in his eye, and he worked for FedEx. Like, he was a driver at this point.
Oh,
Yep. And, we were newly married, and the doctors, because no one knew what this was. Like, the vaccines had just come out. They had no idea what was happening. They sent us to the cancer center, the oncologist at the cancer
Right.
center. And I remember thinking, man, this is it. Like, this is my testimony. And I think during that time, I really started struggling with negative thoughts and catastrophizing everything. For example, if I went to, a parking garage, I would picture it falling. Or anytime my husband got sick, I really thought like that was it.
Wow.
Um, and so I had to do a lot of counseling
Mm.
first.
Mm-hmm.
But also realizing, and it goes back to what we talked about earlier, like where does my faith lie? Where do I get my strength? If I truly believe that my God is God, right? And he knows everything before it happens, then every single thing that is going to happen to me, whether it's negative, whether it's bad, whatever I focus on, has already been written in the book of life.
Mm.
And I have
Mm-hmm.
to trust that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and so now what I do is instead of praying, God, please don't let my husband die, please don't let this garage fall on me, what I do is, God, thank you for the wonders I've seen. And have this like true sense of gratefulness
Yes.
for the time that I've had with whoever it is, for the moment that I'm in right now, and appreciating the now, the fact that I even get to experience the things that I do, right? I am so grateful that even when there's negative thoughts, that my God has seen me through every single one of those thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's how I approach it.
Yeah.
Truthfully, I suffer from the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I heard was a spirit of gratitude, and that is definitely a great remedy when you start going down that rabbit hole of catastrophizing thing, as you said.
Mhm.
And counseling, you mentioned, I'm
Mhm.
very open about the fact that I'm in therapy. I sort of backdoored my way in, through grief counseling. And then I got there and I was like, where has this been all of my life? Oh my God,
Mhm.
being able to begin to understand some of the whys behind why I do what I do, and really having someone skilled who has expertise in psychosocial emotional help open things up for me in a way that helped me on my path to better. So that spirit of gratitude, that counseling, that being intentional about bringing our thoughts back from the abyss of negativity.
Mhm.
And you know, uh, I was I did a keynote talk a week ago, well, a little over a week ago, a little under a week ago, and I had the chance to talk about a new book. The author is Dr. Anita Phillips, and I believe the book is called The Garden Within. I highly encourage individuals to grab a hold of that book and read it. It is a phenomenal. I've just started it, but I've heard her speak about the book, and she talked about that our actions are really a derivative from our beliefs. So we
Mhm.
start off with a belief, and our belief comes from seeds, words being seeds. So, these seeds, these words, whether when we were younger or at pivotal times in our lives, helped us form different beliefs about ourselves, about the way we see the world.
Mhm.
And then those beliefs cause us to feel a certain way. So
Mhm.
if I believe that my husband is going to go blind, um, then that creates fear. I start to feel fear.
Mhm.
And then when that fear happens, then my thoughts start to race, and I start having these thoughts about catastrophes that are going to happen.
Mhm.
And and then those thoughts cause me to act. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the way that Dr. Phillips laid it out. But, and she talked about it, that's, that's sort of different than the way neuroscience has understood the the whole concept of, we used to think that our thoughts informed our feelings, informed our actions. But Dr. Phillips posits, she likes to go by Dr. Anita, like I like to go by Dr. Shay, but Dr. Anita posits that based on more emerging research in the field of neuroscience, and certainly in alignment with books of faith, and that is that it's actually belief that informs feelings, that informs thoughts, that informs actions. So I just thought that that
Yeah.
was just a powerful concept. But I saw that in the story that you shared, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really easy to get bogged down in the fear,
Mm,
right? And it goes back to better not perfect, right? This fear of not meeting societal goals.
exactly.
Yeah.
And where does imposter syndrome really derive from? It's from a belief that I am inferior, because of maybe what seeds were planted in me as a young person, seeds of inferiority, seeds of being too much or not enough.
Mm,
And then those beliefs create feelings in me, feelings of anxiety, feelings of not enoughisms.
mm,
And then I start to think, I'm not qualified for this job. I can't do
mm,
this job.
mm,
And then I begin to act. I become this self fulfilling prophecy. I
mhm,
start to doubt, and I start to self destruct sometimes.
yeah.
Sometimes, I start to believe I can't do the work. And so the work doesn't get done or the work is late.
Mm,
So
mm,
there are a myriad of ways in which we self sabotage by imploding. And so when we really look at this notion of imposter syndrome,
mm,
I, I totally see Dr. Anita's formula.
mhm, mhm.
So, Brenda, this has been just a pleasure. Just really talking through these things and unpacking this whole notion of perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and how we have found remedies within ourselves, and remedies from above,
Yeah.
remedies from supportive infrastructures, or what I would call scaffolding in the book,
Yeah.
you know, um, in our relationships and our connections with others, helping us to heal and really come to a place of self awareness and understanding and self love. And so that we could show up and be and live our authentic lives and be our authentic selves. So I'm going to close this out and just really thank our Better Not Perfect podcast audience for joining us today. And if you have had a chance to view season one, or if you want to go back and catch up on some season one episodes, you can do so and find the podcast on YouTube. Just search Better Not Perfect on YouTube. You can also find it on Apple Podcasts and on Linktree at Better Not Perfect. And if you can't remember any or all of those places, just visit my website, www.drshaybutler.com. That's www.drshaibutler.com, and you will find more episodes. So we really look forward to just seeing you join us back next week for our next episode. And we thank Brenda for her time today. So until next week, continue to be better, do better, and just love better.